All right, guys, back here on the Fox 5 Live Zone. Now to a developing story overseas. Syrians now celebrating the fall of President Bashar al-Assad after rebels seized control of the Syrian capital. We're learning the president has escaped with his family to Russia, ending the family's 50-year rule and capping 13 years of civil conflict. Joining us now to discuss all things surrounding that is foreign policy expert Mr. Harley Lippman back here on the Fox 5 Live Zone. Mr. Lippman, always good to see you, sir. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So let's jump right into this. This is a lot to digest here for folks that are really trying to put this all into a nutshell, if you will. This was really a 2-week lightning advance by rebel fighters. All of this unfolding very quickly, as I stated, within the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's correct. It seems to have surprised everyone. Apparently, the Biden administration on Saturday thought that Assad would be able to hold out. They gave him a better than 50% chance, and then one day later, he had to flee the country. So, once again, we missed the analysis, and that's another whole issue. But as you said, it's complicated, and to make it easier for the viewers, people should understand that radical Islamists have taken over Syria. That's the bottom line. The government of Bashar Assad has been falling apart and is out of power. So the question is, what does this mean for us? And what are the consequences for the United States and for the world at large?
And so, Mr. Lippman, with that being said, to your point, as you stated, the new leader promised equality for all, regardless of religion. But, well, that group, if you will, that regime, as you pointed out, happened to once be a part of Al-Qaeda. We have seen video of a number of Syrians cheering, jumping for joy now that Assad has, in essence, been exiled. And so many Americans are wondering, hey, what gives? Why is one not supporting, one being the U.S., the new regime?
Well, as you mentioned, this new regime is an offshoot of Al-Qaeda and ISIS. And they have pledged to destroy Israel, to liberate Jerusalem, to quote them. And they hate America. Remember who ISIS and Al-Qaeda is. And while we fought against them and we'd like to think they were destroyed, they have come back, especially ISIS. CENTCOM, the Pentagon, has attacked 70 targets in Syria, ISIS targets, just to give you an example of how strong ISIS has become again. So for Israel, it's a mixed blessing, because on the one hand, and the United States, it's a mixed blessing as well. On the one hand, it's a huge loss for Iran, huge. But that's the good news. But the bad news is Israel has on its border a radical Islamic regime.
So yet again, I guess it's a case of pick your poison. In this case, we're thinking of Assad, who has now left and is exiled in Russia in this new regime, one that, as you stated and as I stated as well, happened to formerly be a part of Al-Qaeda. The question is, as you pointed out, what will happen from here? Obviously, we know that President Biden has spoke out stating that, in essence, they are closely watching this. It is not only a potential gain for the U.S., but yet again, a risk.
Yes. It's a huge risk because, again, it's the equivalent of ISIS having won in Iraq and Iraq being an ISIS nation. Just think of how catastrophic that would be. This is somewhat similar. But I think that while the future is uncertain as to what will happen with an Islamic radical regime in Syria, what is clear is that this has been, as I mentioned a moment ago, a devastating loss for Iran. Iran lost two of their most important allies, Syria and Hezbollah in Lebanon. They had actual access to the Mediterranean, going through, having Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. Now they lost Syria and Lebanon. So what does this mean? It means two things. One is that there are two allies that are remaining, which is the Shia militias in Iraq and the Houthis in Yemen, will step up and try to do what Hezbollah and the Syrians were able to do for Iran previously. But that's very limiting. The second and most important consequence is, what is Iran going to do now? Because what we hear is they're in a rush to develop a nuclear bomb. And Iran has never been weaker. So while this new administration may be seen as somewhat isolationist, I would say that Trump has an extraordinary ability to see unexpected opportunities. He's been a brilliant businessman, and I think this is exactly the right time for the United States and/or Israel to finally take out the nuclear reactors in Iran and help create an Arab Spring there, which will liberate and free the Iranian people, and for once and for all, create peace in the Middle East.
Something we will have to wait and see if it actually happens. Yet again, foreign policy expert Mr. Harley Lippman, kind enough to join us, as he always does, right here on the Fox 5 Live Zone. Truly appreciate your time, sir.
Thank you.
All right. We should also make mention that we are expecting a State Department press conference to get underway. We would assume that they will address the unrest that we are now seeing in Syria. When that happens, we'll take you there live. In the meantime, we're going to take a quick break. On the flip side of that break, it's the big story back here in America, the allegations against Jay-Z. We'll chat about it next, right here on the Live Zone.